mentioned about increasing slow. You published, you wrote it actually in 2004. Now we have a new edition. And what changed in the meanwhile?
You mean in the world?
In the world and maybe in your life?
Well, the world is probably more interesting. Well, certainly more interesting to me. The world, well, certainly since 2004.
Of course, related
to slow. Yeah. Well, clearly, when I wrote that book, social media was just starting off, right? So it wasn't as ubiquitous and all-consuming as it is today. So that's a big shift. That feeling of there was a lot of pressure there to be always on and answer an email all the time and stuff. Of course, now with social media, there's a lot more pressure, social pressure now to do it. So in some ways, I feel that the world has accelerated, but of course, at the same time, this on the other track, the current for slowing down has grown immensely. In fact, it's grown very fast. The slow movement has grown quickly. And if I look back now, all these years, and think, when I wrote that book and started playing with the idea of a slow movement and stuff, and could we talk about a slow movement, to where we are now, I'm just blown away by all of the changes that have happened. I'm hopeful. I'm not an extremist of slowness. I love speed. Faster is often better. This whole slow philosophy is about doing things at the right speed, doing things not as fast as possible, but as well as possible. Very simple idea, but one that can apply to everything. So this whole slow revolution is now, you know, there's movements for everything from slow sex, slow travel, slow fashion, to slow food, slow gaming. Someone launched a slow gaming manifesto the other day. Yeah, slow text, just everything. Because we're bumping up, we all know it, right? Whether you live in Bucharest or London or wherever.
One question from our readers from Facebook. How do you see the relationship between the slow movement and mindfulness?
Well, in some ways I think they're two sides of the same coin, or it's just different language being used. When I talk about slow, it's often quality over quantity, or being present and in the moment, doing one thing at a time, or being mindful. I mean, I think that if you have a Venn diagram, you know, that middle spot with slow and mindful is very big. And the fact that the whole mindfulness revolution came, you know, after my book came out. As soon as it started, I thought, yeah, that's just basically slow with a different brand attached to it and a different technique, obviously. But I mean, I talk about meditation in the book without calling it mindfulness. But yeah, no, I think because mindfulness ultimately, there are techniques and so on, but ultimately it's a state of mind. It's a mindset, right? It's how do you arrive at each moment. And slow is the same. Slow is like taking a chip, a slow chip, putting it in and knowing that you arrive at each moment, not trying to get through that moment as fast as possible, but trying to make the most of that moment, right? And live it fully. And, you know, that sounds pretty much like mindfulness to me in a lot of ways.
Okay, and one last question. If you are a parent and you want to slow down, where should you start?
You mean with your children or on your own?
With your children.
There's something about that moment when a parent sits down to read to a child that is so simple and yet so magical, so tender, so intimate, so universal. We have always told each other stories. You know, even before we had books, parents would sit down and tell stories to their children. And we all have that folk memory. Now, we all remember being read to by our parents. And I found that when I moved away from being very fast and speed reading to reading slowly, you know, not jumping pages, but actually reading the whole thing. My bedtime story, that whole ritual, and then it became more like my reward, and it became the thing I looked forward to, because I knew I would go into that sacred bubble with my son, and I got a daughter as well, and we would just read. And we wouldn't just read. He would tell me what happened at school, or we would cuddle, or we'd tell jokes, or we'd just lie there, right? And I know that I will remember those moments now for the rest of my life, right? And those are moments that brought us together as a father and son, father and daughter, like nothing else. You know, you don't get that when you're running around. And I mean, it's the old thing. You know, nobody lies on their deathbed and looks back and thinks, "I wish I spent more time on Facebook," or that just doesn't happen. Or I wish I spent more time playing Xbox. You wish you spent more time lying in the bed with your children, just hanging out, reading a story, or having a long barbecue meal in the garden with your grandmother the week before she died. You know, those are the moments that give life texture and meaning, and those are the moments that make us full, whole, and human. They are always slow moments, right? They always require that slow chip, that slow approach.